your coach for today. I wanted to talk to you about exercise selection and how to get the most bang for your buck in home workouts. So there are a lot of home workouts out there at the moment. There's loads from your local PT level up to sort of like national PTs like Joe Wicks, national PTs, and then brands are putting them out there, so Nike and Gymshark and all sorts of people are putting home workouts out there. So there's loads and loads to choose from. And if you just picked one of them as at random every day and did that and tried really hard for the next however many weeks we're in lockdown for, you would probably get a little bit fitter, get a little bit stronger, and depending on what you're doing on your nutrition side of things, look a bit different, hopefully in a positive way. However, what would be more effective would be to think about which exercises you're doing and what sort of training you're doing on a daily basis, and implementing some strategies which you would do in the normal gym setting or your PT would do for you in the normal gym setting to ensure progressive overload, which is the key to making progress. So what that means is that if you do 10 press-ups in session 1, that in session 2 you're aiming to do 12 press-ups, or 10 press-ups with slightly heavier weight, or 10 press-ups with a tempo added to it, or something that makes that little bit harder, is progressively overloading your body as you go from session 1 to session 2 to session 3 to session 50, or however long we are in quarantine for. And if you're doing loads of different workouts from loads of different people, what's difficult is to see that progression from movement to movement and session to session. So if you did press-ups on Monday, but the next time you do press-ups are in 2 weeks' time, it's really difficult to compare those two. And obviously with everything else that's going on in the workout, it's really difficult to make sure that you're making those press-ups themselves that bit harder. So to some extent, it is more effective to have a core group of exercises that you're doing on a regular basis that you can make sure you're improving on, which makes progressive overload easier to track, and in theory and usually in practice your actual gains or progression will be more effective and easier to see. So what I'm doing is every other day I'm progressing on my key movements that I've picked. So whether that's adding in some reps or adding in some weight or adding in some sets, I'm making sure that I'm making progress from session 1 to session 2 on my key movements that I've chosen for me. What I'm doing on the other days is doing some other stuff. So I'm doing a bit of yoga, I'm doing some HIIT stuff, and I'm finding those on the internet and just picking them and getting a nice bit of variety into my training. But in the background, I've got some progressive overload on some core resistance movements. So for our legs, we want to be focusing on these sort of movements. So a squat or any variation of a squat, a lunge, any variation of that, whether it's forwards, backwards, sideways, whatever it is, a swing, and a deadlift in either a stiff or Romanian style, or in a bent or conventional style, so whether we're using our knees more or our hips more. Those are the key movements for our legs, and I've chosen to really focus on lunge because with minimal weight, obviously by using one leg it's already making it more challenging, so I'm doing that because I don't have much kit at home. For our pushing movements, which is shoulders, chest and triceps focused, overhead presses, so anything above your head, horizontal presses, anything out in front, a fly, so anything coming into the center from out wide, a dip, and a tricep extension where you've got elbows fixed, so it's only using one joint rather than using 2 joints in a press up. I've chosen overhead presses because, again, with minimal weight at home, it's more challenging to press overhead than to press out in front. And I've chosen a fly because, again, with minimal weight, you can sort of target your chest quite heavily, but any of those would be good options for you. In terms of our pulling exercises, there's all sorts of row variations using loads of different equipment. There's pull-ups, which again have quite a high barrier to entry in terms of strength to weight, so they might be one to avoid, and also you need a pull-up bar, which I don't have, so I'm not doing any of them at the moment. Reverse flies, the opposite of that chest fly, getting those rear delts, and a bicep curl. So because there's so much variation in the rows, I've chosen a row and I've chosen a bicep curl because who doesn't want bigger arms? And then in terms of core, the key movements are flexion of the core, so the bending forward of the body in layman's terms. That's a pretty rubbish explanation, but you know what I mean. Extension, so the opposite of that, so straightening the back out, a big squeeze at the top. That is an extension, and rotation is obviously anything from side to side using our core. I'm trying to do all 3 of those movements. I'm trying to do them in both a brace position, so like a hold, a static movement, so like a plank for flexion as long as you're making sure that you've got that nice strong core and extension. So like a big Superman or a skydiver, whatever you want to call it. So braced position for your extension, and then anything in motion for both of those as well. So like crunches would be a normal for a dynamic movement for the flexion sort of movement, and rotations sort of moving from side to side, whether it's a Russian twist or heel taps or anything like that. So try and think about your core as in those three sort of planes of movement, and in both a braced position and in motion. So again, what I would do is go through them and maybe pick one from each quadrant or two from each quadrant, and have a core routine that you do on that, and then progress your sets, reps, or weight, or tempo, or anything that makes that individual exercise harder each time that you perform it, whether it's every other day, every third day, whatever it is, and then drop in some interesting stuff from people's yoga accounts, Pilates accounts, dancing accounts, HIIT accounts, whatever it is around that, but keep your core training with some sort of structure to it. It would be my piece of advice.